everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for February 5th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me today is Mary. How you doing, Mary?
I'm doing great. Glad to be back for another season of Big Brother Celebrity. In some ways, it feels like it's been a long time since we've talked Big Brother, and in other ways, it feels like it was just yesterday. So back at it, but a while since the last Celebrity Big Brother. So
Very long while, yeah.
I forgot what a different game it is. It's like in ways more cringy and more happy at the same time too, because it's like watching for the most part, it's like watching people, like, oh, they're trying to play our game. That's so fun.
Yeah, it's honestly, I think you'd think that celebrities would be better at this kind of thing
Yeah.
instinctually, but no,
No.
not
Well,
usually.
and you guys have mentioned a lot, like, it's part of it has to do with that whole thing of them being celebrities. Like, they make it harder, just in the introductions, because you can't all sit around and get to know each other because you have this air of like, oh, we're supposed to know each other. So if we don't, it's awkward now. Ugh.
Yes. Well, we are here to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big Brother Celebrity 3 live feeds. It was day 10 in the house. They talked about, man, look at this. We're a third of the way through already. Well, for us, it just started. So,
And there's got to be a better way of doing this, right? Like, especially just having 10 days before you have, or 9 days before you have the first vote. And then it's like 2 days, 3 days, really, really quick. So I feel like there should be some kind of way just to ease them in a little better where we're not having to play this catch up. But oh well.
I mean, their strategy seems to have worked because there's been apparently so much controversial stuff that's happened in the first 8 days
Yeah.
that we haven't seen any of it in the last 2 days. So I think it worked, their strategy here.
Takes a little longer for that learning curve.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about what happened yesterday on the feeds. There wasn't too much of note prior to the eviction, but we did see that Teddy continued to campaign against Mirai. And little did she know that wasn't going to matter. And she worked really hard on Chris Kirkpatrick, who was struggling with this vote. He, as we mentioned yesterday, had some drama with Mirai and really wanted Mirai out, really wanted Teddy to stay. So Teddy was really pushing him hard to make that happen. She was like, let's both go to, because he was like, oh, I really wish Misha. Oh. She's like, let's both go to Misha. And he was like, I don't know about that. You can go to Misha. I don't think we should both go to Misha. So he went to Misha alone and he pitched again, hey, we should really keep Teddy. She should be useful to us, so on and so forth. And Misha, yet again, was like, dude, no, not into that. Teddy, at which point, was like, oh, look at them. They're both talking. Let me come in and do my thing, which I wanted to do, which is pitch with Kirkpatrick there. So she pitched, hey, Misha, you should keep me. Here's why. I have a target, and that target is not you. It's Todrick, your number one ally. I'm not going to lie and say I'm going to go after Carson, because I'm not. I'm going after Todrick. Todrick, she says, is the one person that I was warned about before entering this game. And when I came in here, I was like, oh, maybe that was wrong. But no, it was right.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of, I don't even know if I would say it's a misread, but Teddy has this perception that Chris Kirkpatrick is Misha's number one, which I think goes in one direction and not necessarily the other, right? And so because of that, Teddy's doing a lot of reassuring to Misha, like, oh, and I'm cool with Chris, like, not coming after him, everything will be good, when she's missing the fact that, like you said, Todrick is also in with Misha, and that's not that big of a help there. There's also something that in the Teddy Chris conversation from right before this, I don't know how important this is, but speaking of controversy, Teddy thinks that part of the reason she was put up was because Chris wasn't in the house to persuade Misha not to put her up at that time when those renoms were made. So I don't know. Do you think that that holds any water there? I don't, because I don't think Chris really has the pull over Misha that Teddy thinks he does.
He has zero pull over Misha, as
Yeah.
we've seen in the last few days. And that's sort of like, I think that's what Misha has used with Chris, which is, you know, when he came back into the house, oh, sorry, it's already happened now, so now I can't take it
Yeah.
back. But she has very little influence
It's
over,
more the excuse rather
or he
than the
has very little influence.
reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the other thing about this, and this is the one thing I haven't been able to track from the feeds, I feel like it's still the one gap in my knowledge, is at what point did Shayna leave the original alliance and get more over on the side of Misha and Todrick?
Well, so
'Cause that's
this happened, yeah, this happened prior to the feed starting, but from what we can
yeah,
tell, it was that night in the episode where she goes up to Misha and spills everything, worried that she might go up as the replacement. The bigger question for me is like when did she really link up with Kirkpatrick? Was that before or after that moment? Because they are the true duo here, and that's
right.
what Teddy mentions to him as well. You know, because Kirk, thinking he's slick here, is talking to Teddy, and she's like, "Don't just do whatever Misha tells you to." And he's like, "Look, I think people might be surprised where my true loyalties lie." And she's like, "Yeah, with Shayna." He's like, "Oh, well."
Yeah,
Uh,
which also gets awkward because Teddy's like, hey, you're close with Shayna. Can I trust Shayna?" And you're like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
She's
know."
she's worried that Shayna might be snaking her, and he's like, "No, no, you're good. Shayna's good."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so Kirk talks to Misha after Teddy made that pitch to Misha about targeting Todrick, and he was like, "Well, look, I didn't want that to happen. I'm so sorry. I'm not on board with what she is saying. Saying she's going after Todrick, that's no good. No good going after Todrick. So I get it. We're gonna do what we need to do. She's got to go."
Yep. Yep. Which I think, based on the edit of the episodes too, everyone kind of saw coming. I mean, there were some chances there. Unfortunately, it's like the real chance is that you got to get Chris away from Misha, but it just doesn't seem to be working.
Hmm. So Kirk also talks to Shayna, and he's like, "Hey, guess what? I just saved you with Teddy. She was worried about you." And I was like, "Nah, don't worry about Shayna." And they talk a little bit about, you know, how Shayna is having to play Carson and Cynthia, and was caught in a couple of situations, and so they're all locked in. The vote is against Teddy. We get to the episode, and we have this twist: the Mon Juan, the now wow.
Yeah,
This
which
is
is what
now
I kept
wow.
reading it. I kept reading it that way too, so I don't feel that bad. I was like, wait a second, what?
The now wow or the mom.
It says now wow. This nom nom now.
Mom. Nom now. Yeah. And then maybe it's just something to do with the time in which I grew up, but like nom for food was like real big in high school. So I
Nom
read it, I was like,
nom.
nom now. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna have to eat something gross. Really? That was I'm sorry, I have seen this show before, but that's what nom meant to me.
Nom nom.
I need a pancake.
Yeah. We get that, and as we talked about, the passing of the safety bag hat goes pretty much according to what we would expect. Cynthia chooses Shayna, who she thinks is on her side. Shayna chooses Kirkpatrick because they're a duo. Kirk chooses Todrick. Then Todrick chooses Catan. We didn't really get much explanation about that over the night, in terms of like why he chose to do that. I imagine we'll get that in an episode. He'll give some explanation as to why he chose Catan. But then Catan obviously chooses Todd to be nominated for eviction. But it's not going to change anything as Todd decides to replace Mirai, and Teddy is voted out by likely the same amount of votes that she was going to be voted out.
Yeah, but small victory for Chris Kattan getting to nominate Todd.
Yes. I don't like him.
I don't like him.
Just kidding. Just kidding. But yeah, get him out.
I love a lot of the like small duo relationships or little fights in this alignment. I really like this. I don't maybe it's just because it's so early so far, but a lot of the classic like people in Celebrity Big Brother who maybe aren't playing the hardest, I just find them more funny this season, where in the past I was kind of more like wish we had more players. Now I'm like, nah, this is great. This is a good time.
Yeah. Well, we again, Teddy is voted out. Shayna votes Teddy out, which is a surprise to Carson and Cynthia. We see a little bit of the fallout of that at the end of the
And
episode.
Teddy.
And Teddy, yes. And there is some fallout still to be had from that. But when the feeds come back, there's HOH hadn't been played. Then they go down again. Feeds come back again, and we have a new HOH. And that new HOH is Chris Kirkpatrick. Kirk is the new HOH, and that spells trouble for Mariah yet again, as she has been his target for a while.
Yeah, it's not great for the Mariah fans, myself included. And thinking about it from the Chris perspective, at first I was like, oh, but if you're in this alliance that, protected Mariah last time, maybe try to foster that relationship instead. But Mariah is definitely a Chris target rather than like a bigger alliance target. Even though Chris is going to continue to say that he wants to do what the house wants, classic Big Brother. I don't know that the house would really rally around wanting Mariah out. So I think there's a potential here if he goes down that route that would set him, depending on who the other nominee might be, it could set him up for not getting Mariah out, even if he puts her up.
Mm-hmm. So Kirk here has the HOH. Todrick and Shayna are going to talk briefly once the feeds come up, that they're very happy that Kirk won. They say that Todd is pissed at Cynthia for voting him out. So that is another bit of fallout from the eviction, that when Todd went up, Cynthia voted Todd out, which I was interested in what might happen there. But because she'd been working on him for a while, he is not pleased with Cynthia for casting a vote against him.
Can we stop down on that real quick, just the vote situation? So can you see any logic behind the people who kind of knew that the vote was going to be close between Mariah and Teddy? Do you really think that any of them truly thought Todd could actually go home in this scenario? Or because I almost feel like in that case, it's like you have two people who have the chance of going out. You might as well just pile on the person who's probably going home in that case to not upset the person who's going to stay in the house, who it's not even like they knew, like Mariah knew all week that these people might vote her out, but Todd didn't. So I don't know. I don't know gameplay wise. I feel like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm glad we didn't have a unanimous vote early on. That's always fun. But
yeah, I don't think they expected Todd to go or Teddy to stay. They were certainly hoping that would happen. I think it's important to remember that, like, especially the people that voted Todd out, not fans of the game.
Yeah.
And so, I think they went into this vote kind of feeling like anything could happen. You vote for the person you want to stay, and then hopefully you get enough.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I just wish that I heard more about why following the vote. Instead, pretty much all the talk was like, oh no, Todd's upset. It's like, yeah, what were you thinking was going to happen? Todd's still here. But oh well, it is what it is. I mean, I do have to remember also it's celebrities who probably value their relationships maybe more so than other people might, thinking at least that they have more reason to.
Integrity.
Yeah.
So Shayna's talking to Todrick. Shayna says Carson is a huge threat. She says America is going to love him. He's definitely going to win America's favorite. We don't need another Ross Matthews in here dominating the game, coming in second place and winning America's favorite. No, get this guy out.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting angle. I'm actually kind of surprised. I shouldn't be, but I'm surprised to hear how much people are talking about like really, really wanting and needing the money even more so than the win, which I think is part of this conversation, right? Of like not wanting someone to get the second place prize money and any kind of America's favorite. Which I do think the read's like not bad there. I don't think Carson's really set himself up to come in second place, but I do think that show wise he's coming across very entertaining.
Yeah. She says she wanted to work with Carson, but he was already way too close to Teddy and Cynthia. She felt like he would never talk game with her. And this kind of tracks for me. Carson is kind of rarely found without Cynthia by his side. And when Teddy was there, he was rarely found without the two of them by his side. He seems like the kind of person who he's got his close friends, and he's also very like the thing is he's also clearly very social, but I think he attracts people who get close to him, and then he's got like kind of a posse around him, and perhaps again that's sort of why Todrick felt a little bit like excluded from his situation, even in the drag race realm. But who knows? They say that they would love for Kirk to go after Carson, but he'll probably go after Mariah, which is also fine. Todrick is like, you know what, whatever works. I don't even care at this point. He can go after Mariah. I just love that he's HOH. And Shayna says, look, Todrick, I will never, ever screw you over. I want to work with you. And he's like, yes, I want to work with you too. And they're like, they're making a bond here.
And I mean, spoiler alert, but this is my favorite part of Big Brother is that you watch a conversation and I'm sitting here watching this being like, oh my gosh, they are locked in, such a duo. Look at them promising everything. And then my notes an hour later is completely different. So it's so fun that you get to play this like because sometimes people are truly like they're saying what they mean in the moment, and this is how maybe they felt in the moment, and then things change. I mean, we're gonna hear it constantly throughout the show. It's like, oh, this game is changing hour by hour. Oh, look, hour by hour this game is changing, and that's true. And so I don't know if they're lying at this time or if this is just how they feel in the moment and it's then gonna change. But yeah, it's going to change pretty soon.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about this is that Shayna's the one driving this conversation, the anti-Carson stuff, saying she really wants to work with Todrick. She's pushing this, and yet later, as you mentioned, she kind of implies perhaps that she's not particularly with Todrick, and not particularly wanting Carson to go, although she may have just been reacting to what Kirk was saying in that moment. It's definitely interesting, and I would love to know exactly where, yet again, where Shayna stands in all of this. But this is her conversation with Todrick. In the meantime, Kirk is going to go and talk to Todd, not Todrick, Todd. And they are going to talk through options and who they like. This is mostly Kirk kind of trying to get a sense of where Todd stands with everyone in the house. And Todd is pretty open with his thoughts. He says that he thinks Carson is the threat. He's not a fan of Cynthia. She voted for him to go. And also there was some drama. Apparently, I think from what I could gather during the drama with Teddy, Cynthia was like, take an effing joke, Todd. And he's like, I can take a joke, but don't tell me to take an effing joke. And he was not pleased about that. He says that he really likes Shayna. He really likes Lamar. They both do. He wouldn't want to go after Todrick or Misha. Kirk does ask about Todrick. He says, do you think if the chips were down, you think he would go to the other side? And Todd was like, no, he's good. He's loyal. And he's like, okay. And Todd talks about Mariah and how obviously Kirk really wanted Mariah gone. He doesn't think Mariah is a threat, but if Kirk wanted to target her, that's fine. Kirk says he's not necessarily targeting her anymore. He says it's been cleared up, but he does want to do what the house wants. He doesn't want to make a big move. He also asks about Catan, and Todd says, well, I think Catan is coming for me, but he's not a big threat to anybody else. And Kirk's like, well, I don't want anybody coming after you. And so they're just kind of talking through these options.
Yep, a lot of names getting brought up. Is interesting to try and figure out exactly what Chris is trying to what information he's trying to gain here. Certainly trying to see how Todd feels about the votes that came against Todd, and also, like he said, mentioning that how how close Todrick is, and whether or not Todrick is someone they need to worry about, which I mean, based on the previous conversation with Todrick and Shayna, I don't believe that Todrick has any plans of leaving this alliance anytime soon. I think that Todrick kind of already made his bed and is kind of sticking with it.
Yes. So we'll get to this more, but Kirk is definitely thinking a little more strategically. At least that's what I'm seeing than I anticipated, given the previous night of feeds where he was just so focused on this beef with Mirai. And now kind of luckily for him, it seems to be working out for him now that he's HOH. But we'll get into that a little more. Shayna also talked to Misha briefly. They talked about how Cynthia is upset with Shayna because she feels like Shayna gave Teddy her word. But she's like, I never gave Teddy my word. I never shook on anything. I never was like, hey, I'm definitely voting to keep you. I never gave my word. I don't know why she's so upset.
Yeah, I mean, because you were in that alliance to begin with, that could be part of it. It's so weird because like the show, you watch the first episode and you're like, here's the 4, and then by the time the feeds came on, I'm like, wait a second, did I imagine that was Teddy in the 4 and not Shayna? No, okay, just checking. But yeah, so that's probably why people don't generally like it when you flip on your day 1 alliance and then vote someone out. But oh well, a lot of the drama has stemmed from either people telling jokes that people don't take well, or telling people to take a joke that they don't take well, or this sort of like, oh well, I felt like we were drifting apart and I wasn't your center of attention. That seems to be where most of the alliances have broken up.
Yep. Kirk is going to talk to Cynthia, and they talk a bit about Teddy. And then Kirk says that his only real thought so far was to go after Catan, since he's just not really in the game. And he says, look, I'm not going to give you my word because I'm not going to make that mistake. But you and Carson, you're not on my radar. I'm not going to do what a team wants me to do. I'm going to do what's best for my game.
Right.
Which is the opposite of what he told Todd.
Right. Unless the team tells me to do what's best for my game, and then I'll probably do that. But
well, that would really put him in quite the pickle.
Yeah. Now, okay, I feel like this is sort of backwards to conventional HOH strategy. Normally, the HOH waits for people to come to them, and then maybe they'll make deals, but it's usually the other way around. Like, you come to me, tell me what you'll do for me, and then I may or may not tell you I'm safe. Chris is like going around to each individual person and sort of being like, hey, I'm probably going to keep you safe. I'm going to tell you a lot of things now so that if I do put you up later, you can think back on this conversation and be upset about it.
Yeah, and this was also weird. He was so proud of himself later for getting so much information from Todd. And then when Cynthia started to like pour all of her information out onto him, as she is wont to do, he was like, Cynthia, no, stop. You're telling me too much. Just chill. Maybe because she sort of exposes everything all the time that he was like, I don't even need to know this. He really felt proud of that moment too. He's like, I think she'll trust me more now. But I feel like you should always let people tell you things because it's an act of trust.
Right. I don't know if I've ever had someone be like, hey, stop talking. See, now you know I trust you. Wait a second.
I mean, stop them if you think they're lying to you, because the act of lying to you is an act of distrust, right? You want people to do things when that mean they trust you. You don't want them to do things that mean they don't trust you. But she wasn't lying.
Yeah, she wasn't lying. I kind of like this from Cynthia of just being like, look, I don't care. Do what you're going to do. Put me up or not. I'm just going to walk around and tell my thoughts to everybody. Like, I love that. I kind of like that. I feel like that's kind of the like, look, my cards are all out on the table. I'm done playing spades, and now here's where I'm at. I like that from her. It's refreshing.
Well, Carson joins the conversation. He says him and Cynthia are not threats physically. They're not going to win anything. They're not going to be around for too long in this game. And Kirk says, look, I know that lines have been drawn and there are sides, but I'm not on a side. despite what people may think.
Right. Except where his loyalties truly lie to Shayna. It's on that side.
It is. Let's briefly talk about this, because this is how I think Kirk is seeing the game at this point. And this is kind of how the game seems to be positioned now that he is in power. It seems to be kind of a game of duos. You've got Kirk and Shayna as a duo.
Yes.
You've got Carson and Cynthia as a duo. You've got Todrick and Misha as a duo. You've got Todd and Lamar as a duo. And then you've got Katan kind of out there by himself.
Right.
And you've got Misha Mirai out there kind of by herself. Now, Katan is loosely attached to Carson and Cynthia just because he voted with them, but they've never talked game. And then you've got Mirai, who is kind of loosely attached to Misha and Todrick. She also had talks with Shayna, though. She's not super attached to anyone in particular, but because of the deal she made with Misha, she is loosely attached to that general side. So the way that Kirk is now looking at the game, especially after he talked to Todd, is that he sees Todd and Lamar as attached to Todrick and Misha, and he sees that that Carson and Cynthia are kind of out there all by themselves. And I think what he's hoping to do is him and Shayna play the middle. He would love for Carson and Cynthia to go after Todrick and Misha, Todrick and Misha to go after Carson and Cynthia. And he would love for, especially if Todd and Lamar to Todrick and Misha, he needs to make sure he does not weaken the other side any further. And so that is why he is talking to Cynthia and kind of being like, look, I don't want to come after you. He's made it clear that he wanted to go after Mirai last week. Misha told him over and over, you can go after her next week. Don't worry about it. So he has a great excuse to take a shot at one of the numbers on the Misha and Todrick side to weaken them, while keeping Carson and Cynthia happy. Hey, I didn't go after you. They're the ones that want to go after you. And it kind of leaves him and Shayna sitting pretty in the middle moving forward.
Yeah. And I like the way that this is all set up. Also, I can't stop giggling every time you call him Kirk. I mean, fair, but it's still funny.
He's a captain.
Yeah, Captain Kirk. I think this is an interesting way that it's set up. I think what he can say all he wants that there are no sides, but I think that that he's not on a side, which is kind of true, except for depending on the way he plays it, it's going to benefit probably one side more than the other. Or let me rephrase. If you put up one person from each side, that's going to have a lasting consequence to you based on who goes home, of where you might be able to fall the next week. So it just depends on how he plays the rest of the relationships. I know this is a very, very short cycle, so it might be able to be kind of swept under the rug because, the time between nominations and someone getting evicted is so quick that they're not going to have to dwell on it for that long, and he might be able to sink back. But certainly if he does go after somebody, if he puts up Mirai and somebody else from the Misha Todrick side, for example, I don't know that he's going to be able to then sink back in with whoever's left once that happens. So he kind of
sink back in.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, that was so, man. I should have got that myself. Now I'm just mad. I was over here trying to think. Now, so the problem is my head's often like, what are some Star Trek jokes I can make instead? It's like, you messed me up with the whole Kirk thing. Yeah, so I don't know. It's interesting just based on he's saying he doesn't want to make a big move, but I do think that would be a big move because it's more permanent in where it would cement him. Whereas if he was going to say, okay, let me take the two people who are definitely opposed to each other that are kind of not major threats, let's put up Todd and Chris Kattan. That doesn't really necessarily help him that much, but it also really minimizes whatever fallout would happen for him next week. If his real goal was to just make the house happy and not ruffle as many feathers.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get some more thoughts from Kirk about what he's thinking in terms of nominations. He's going to talk to Shayna, Todrick, and Misha, the four of them kind of come together. Now, the feed's cut for, it seems like, most of this conversation.
Yeah.
So we missed a lot of it, which is unfortunate because it apparently was pretty major. But we caught Misha kind of suggesting that he do something like Carson and Mirai with Cynthia as a replacement. The sort of recap of this conversation that Kirk has with Shayna afterward is that he's like, that was not a good conversation. I did not like what Misha was doing there. Misha was really pushing. I was already a little worried about Todrick. Now I'm also worried about Misha. And Todrick was trying to get Mirai off the block. And that's no good for me. Which is weird because when Todrick was talking to Shayna, he was like, I don't care if Mirai touches the block. I don't care if Mirai is the target. But apparently in this conversation, he had changed his tune. And Kirk just really got the vibe that Misha and Todrick, as a duo, were trying to control his nominations, or at least that's what he's telling Shayna. So he's not feeling good about that. Kirk says that he tried to convince Cynthia that it was his fault. He says, I threw myself under the bus to Cynthia, that I was the one that convinced you to vote Teddy out. So hopefully that will help you, Shayna. Kirk is he's a very he loves to talk. He loves to like do things for the person that he feels loyal to. He's always trying to like help Shayna out. Shayna's a better player than you do. She doesn't need the help.
Yeah, see, I couldn't tell if it was which direction it was. Is he trying to do things to help her because he feels like she needs help, or is he trying to get her to feel like he is helping her? I feel like is
it's definitely. I mean, he loves to brag about the things that like any time he has an opportunity to be like, I've helped Shayna. But he says he's scared of what just happened with Todrick and Misha, and he said Todrick just had to keep Mirai off the block. He suggests the idea of, okay, well, what if I put Mirai and Todrick on the block, not to get Todrick out, just to make sure he doesn't vote to keep her. Now, obviously, this causes a big stir in the viewers of the feeds because they're, Todrick's on the block. Todrick's gonna go home, which is very possible. But that's not really what Kirk is thinking. Again, he's not thinking about targeting Todrick. I believe what Kirk is thinking is, okay, hold on, because I think his initial thought has been Mirai and Catan. I think that may end up being what he does. But I think he's been thinking Mirai and Catan. But when he had that conversation with Todrick, he was like, wait a minute. What if Todrick and Misha both vote to keep Mirai? What if Todrick and Misha have Todd and Lamar, which is what I suspect, and they have 4 votes to keep Mirai over Catan, and Mirai still stays? That would not be good. So the way around this is to nominate Todrick to make sure that Mirai goes home. So that is the intention of floating this idea, which he does pretty quickly back away from. He says, nah, you know what? It's too early to go after Todrick in that way. But the idea is out there. And honestly, I don't like the idea of nominating Todrick. I feel like that's way too risky in terms of like, that will not allow you to play the middle. That will set off the wrath of them.
If your fear is that they will have the votes, Todrick's not the right person to put up in that case. Put up Lamar, put up Todd, put up somebody else. Because I don't think he's wrong in thinking that way. It's like what I was saying earlier, which is if your goal is to get Mirai out, which you have an excuse to do, you need to make sure that that's going to then land. And it won't necessarily land if you put up somebody from the other side or whatever. Then the people who want to keep Mirai are just going to keep Mirai. So it's interesting plan. I do think he does say like, oh, it's too soon to go after Todrick, and then spends the rest of the conversation still trying to be like, but Todrick's not doing anything for us. Like still trying to plant those seeds that like, but we don't need Todrick later to Shayna, which I think is interesting because I want to know what Shayna is doing. What she's telling Chris that makes Chris think that she's not also at least have some relationship with Todrick. I mean, maybe we're not seeing it and she's telling him like, oh, I'm playing Todrick so hard or something. But, they spent a long time together too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think he feels very, very close to Shayna and that like they're both playing the house, right? And so like he can tell her anything. So this is his idea, and so I mean, in my opinion, the best way to go about this is I think his initial idea, which is that taking out Mirai does sort of weaken that side without actually having to take a shot at that side. And he has again a great excuse for it because he wanted Mirai to go so much anyway, and it doesn't look like he's being disloyal to that side by going after Mirai because that was like really, after everything that you guys told me last week about how I couldn't take out Mariah and I took out Teddy for you, you're not going to let me as HOH do my shot? Like, no, they're going to have to let him do that. The trick is that if he puts up Mariah and Catan, he needs to make sure that Todrick and Misha don't turn on him and keep Mariah, which is what they should do if they knew where all the pieces were lying. The best way to go about this is, never force people to do something that you can convince them to do without forcing them, right? Like that, if you can convince them to do a move that's bad for them and they take out Mirai for you, that's best case scenario. If you force them to by putting one of them on the block, then you've kind of lost that middle position that you are hoping to achieve. So it's a tricky spot here, but I do think ultimately that Mirai is the right target for him at this point. But that's just looking at the pieces. He still hasn't really talked with Mirai. Mirai had some good conversations with Shayna the night before. I feel like Shayna is somebody that can pull Mirai in, and Mirai could be a number for them. And at that point, maybe, taking somebody out like, even Catan wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for him, but not if he goes directly after Mirai again and prevents her from coming to his side. Granted, we don't know what the drama was, and maybe there's an irrevocable sort of like split between the two of them that will never heal.
Yeah, and some of it's like surface level, right? Some of it is, was the drama so bad that they can't, or is it more so like, even if I do genuinely reach out, she may not believe it's genuine because there was drama. So there's sometimes it's like, might as well cut your losses. But I like this idea. It's like, if you want to play the middle, and you almost never actually see this on reality shows. It's like, hey, here are the pieces that are actually in the middle, that are actually not firmly on one side yet. That's where you need to go. That's where you need to create your group. You take your people and do that. Problem is that I'm not sure what Chris, like, even saving Mirai for 1 week. You'd have to like make up from the drama, save her, get her on her side, and then actually develop a relationship with her that would make her want to stay with him as opposed to going somewhere else in the future. So it is a tricky proposition. But assuming that he would put up Mirai, who do you think is the best other person for him to put up to maintain that middle position?
I mean, like I said, I do think it's Catan. Now something that he floated out there is, if we take out Mirai, then we're looking at a situation where the house is split, and it's like it's Todrick, Misha, Todd, Lamar versus Carson, Cynthia, us, Kirkpatrick, Shayna, and then maybe Catan kind of comes over to this side. Now, if he's the one to nominate Catan, perhaps not. But Todd is on the other side. Like, where does Catan really go, right? And also, what does Catan really do for you? He's granted, he apparently almost won this HOH, which they were all kind of like flabbergasted about. But in terms of much else, probably not, and it's not super likely that he's probably going to win many competitions. But if he does, you really want him on your side. But of all people, he's probably the easiest person, just kind of like, no social ramifications from this. Is he really going to be able to retaliate personally? Probably not. So it's kind of the easiest way, as long as you don't have Todrick, Misha, Todd, and Lamar flipping on you and taking Catan out and keeping Mirai.
Yeah. Interesting spot. I wasn't sure how to feel when I first turned on the feeds and saw that Chris had won, but it's proving to be kind of interesting. I'm also rooting for Shayna, so good for her at the very least. And then, did you have anything else from this conversation before I move on, or?
No, that's he does say he's well, okay. So he says he says he wants to talk to everyone to get their thoughts and then probably just do Catan. So I'm expecting Mariah and Catan still as sort of his default, but I think he still has some conversations to go. He also says, what would Derek do?
Yeah, I did note that. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Possibly not win HOH this early, but
that's Derek. He took out Devin, bro.
oh yeah. This was the Devin Bro week. It's interesting. I think that's funny that that he said that. Is we know that Chris Kirkpatrick has watched the show at least somewhat from his intro package, and he's later going to be like, when do I get to say who wants to see my HOH room? Which that was funny. Yeah, that was an interesting moment. I do think that he probably will float around the idea of Todrick and just kind of hope that, like, I think if multiple people told him, yeah, get Todrick up, I think he would potentially consider it again, even though he said it was early. Because he did float the name out there to Todd already, and then in this Shayna conversation. But
what I would say is if I like I said, I think that it's certainly possible he still puts Todrick up. I feel like he's probably smart enough to realize an initial nomination where you don't expect Todrick to even go. Probably not. But I would say if he does put up Mariah and Catan or something along those lines, if Mariah wins the veto, I would look out if I were Todrick, because I feel like a backdoor situation could be in play.
Because at that point, he's like, oh, shoot, the one person that I had as my actual target, no longer available. I should probably just take a shot at the person who I actually feel like, isn't working with me. So after, Shayna ends the conversation by saying that, she wants to sleep on these possible nom ideas. And he reiterates to her that she's safe. No reason for her to go up. She can relax. He's actually going to say at some point that there are 9 people left. And so they have a 1 in 9 chance at winning. Which I guess he's factoring in the fact that there will be 9 people left after this week, and that him and Shayna are close. But I was like, wait a second, I did the math like 3 times. Like, I don't think that's right. So that's pretty funny. It's like you only voted one guy out or one person out. And then interesting based on, because again, I'm just trying to figure out at this point, I was like, okay, where do Shayna's loyalties lie? We just had a conversation with Todrick, and then we have this information. And based on what we saw on the episodes, it's not impossible for people to hear information from the HOH and then immediately run and tell it to someone else. But she doesn't immediately run back to Todrick and be like, hey, your name's out there or anything. So definitely signs leaning towards her and Chris actually being pretty tight. She does later tell Carson and Cynthia that Kirkpatrick doesn't like it when Misha and Todrick are telling him how to run his game, though.
Yes.
So that information does get out. She does seem to be trying to keep up some of those relationships with Carson and Cynthia.
Exactly. Yeah. And she told Kirk that this was her plan, that she wants to try and, repair this relationship. She thinks she can. So she is, again, continuing to actively play both sides. And seems like she is getting away with it. Now, see, this is the difference between Todrick and Shayna, right? Because Todrick, he was playing both sides. The second he even a little bit got caught, he was like, "Oh no, it's because of this and all of this, and this is my reasoning." And he gave up on trying to play both sides. Shayna very actively playing both sides, like very actively lying to both sides. People are less pissed at Shayna when they find out that she is playing both sides, and when she does get caught, like in this vote, she's not giving up. She's like, "Oh no, don't worry about that. What are you talking about? No, I'm still on your side. Absolutely." Not giving up. That's because Shayna's playing harder than Todrick, and she's playing better than Todrick. And that's how you play both sides. That's how you play this game.
Yeah, and all of the things we've talked about with them being in the middle, like Chris Kirkpatrick also was kind of set up to be in a good middle position here, because even though he appeared to be fully entrenched in one side, it was very public that he didn't want to vote Teddy out. And so that kind of gives some leeway for him to still want to maintain a good relationship with Carson and Cynthia as well, because that wasn't his, if he had it his way, he would have voted Mariah out last week. Not that Mariah ended up being there when the vote came around anyway, but
yeah.
Oh well.
If only they had known, right? Like they worked so hard to piss Kirkpatrick off about that, and then it didn't even happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Shayna is gonna work on Carson and Cynthia later in the night as well. And that's pretty much it. So as I said, I expect that that Kirk will be looking at Mirai as the primary target, and with Catan as potentially a backup target or as a pawn next to Mirai. But don't be surprised if something else ends up happening, because it does seem like he's still pretty up in the air. At one point in his conversation with Shayna, he was like, so we have options. Put Mirai up, and then she interrupted him, and he didn't say the other options. So we don't know all of the options that he's considering exactly. But we're gonna have to see if this lands. But like I said, I think the most likely situation right now is Mirai and Catan.
Yep. A couple other things that are just sort of general Big Brother celebrity things that I found funny.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, do people just talk loud and out in the open? Like, occasionally you'll see someone turn a corner and like check and see if anyone's there. But there are so many times that people have long like alliance talks just in the rooms that don't even have doors, which I think is really funny. And that just seems very celebrity to me. Maybe the audio equipment's gotten better and they're not actually talking that loud, but it seems like they're just talking. Like they're like sitting across the room from each other on their beds talking like, okay, guess we're doing that. So in general, they're doing a lot of that, unless they're whispering and then we just don't know. So that was frustrating. I hate it when they whisper. And then the other thing, it's been said, but still funny to me, that they keep calling the diary rooms interviews. Like, oh, I got to go do an interview.
Yeah.
It's just so classic. I don't remember them saying that in the first two Celebrity Big Brothers.
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
I don't remember that being a thing.
Lamar also learned a little bit more about the game. He learned how the jury works, and that's how the winner is decided. He was like, "What? That's lame."
What did you think it was gonna be? Do you think it was gonna be like a vote? I mean, I think he thought
it was gonna be a basketball game.
I thought the way he was talking, it almost seemed like he thought it was just gonna get down to one person eventually, and that was gonna be the person who won. Like they were.
Yeah.
I don't really know how. Like maybe they would just like win a competition at the end. He didn't. Yeah, he didn't know that second place was a thing. It's pretty fun. Like I know that they usually explain to people how the game works, but then it always seems like they're figuring it out in the show. Do they just not listen? Is it like, we're going to hand the information to your manager and then they'll tell you?
To be fair, when you try to explain the rules of a game before you've played the game, like you just kind of gloss it. Like it's hard to understand without practically seeing it.
But like the jury, that's kind of like a big factor.
It's a varying degree. Like people zone out to varying degrees, right? Lamar, definitely somebody who zones out quite a lot.
Yeah. You know what? I think we need to give some props to everyone, though. I mean, people may have left the house temporarily, but no quits yet.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. I think people thought that more people would be, leaving of their own accord. So this is nice.
I just think like they're explaining the rules to Lamar, and they're like, okay, so Lamar, this is how the game works. You vote each other out until you get to the end, and then everybody that's been voted out, they come back together and they vote, and they vote.
I need a pancake.
This is his mind as they explain the rules.
I need a pancake.
Needs a pancake.
Was he the same one who said mom? Who said mom earlier?
Yes, that was also Lamar. This was also Lamar.
Please, no crying. She's alive.
I loved that. I really did. I liked that one too. Oh man, these are good. Yeah. So right, it's a fun game. At least there's some strategy. It's very relaxing feeds because for the most part there's only one strategy conversation happening at a time. Yeah. And the other one you can just kind of tune out.
All right. Well. I need a pancake, so this is what we've got here for the day. No episode tonight. We got the night off here,
Yep.
but I will be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern to update you on everything that happens today on the Big Brother Celebrity live feeds. We'll likely get some nominations. We'll get those locked in, and then I expect veto would happen, I guess, tomorrow, or unless they're doing it live on Monday, that might be a thing too. But either way, we should have some nomination updates for you by tomorrow morning. So make sure you tune in for that. And tomorrow night, of course, we'll have an episode recap after the episode. You can also watch with me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. I'll be watching the episode live along with all of you. So go over there and check that out. You can also find some YouTube videos I'm making over at Taran's Quest, talking about books, shows, whatever. Or on Twitter at Armstrong Taran. I tweeting some things out, and yeah, all those things. Just do those things. Mary, where can people find you?
You can find me everywhere at Frail Mary, and you'll hear me again soon in the Rob is a Podcast main feed early next week. I'm going to leave that open-ended, so you can just hypothesize on what you think that might be about. Not Big Brother related, so something interesting. And you guys, if you're not watching along on Taran's Twitch stream while you're watching the feeds, what are you doing? That's the only way to watch feeds. Come on.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us here today, and I will see all of you next time.